Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten from the MassRealty Communications team, here to talk with Kerry, the Vice President of Institutional Advancement and Education at the EcoTarium in Worcester, about this incredible museum of science and nature. So museums like this are really interesting to us here at MassRealty because they not only offer fun activities for individuals and families, but they offer important education about science, nature, wildlife, instilling a sense of wonder and curiosity in children and in adults alike. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kerry. Could you introduce yourself for us a little bit first?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me first. So my name is Kerry Castorano, again, the VP of Advancement at the museum. My background is actually in anthropology with a focus on archaeology, so physical anthropology. So the museum world just interested me for many, many years in my undergrad. And when I was leaving grad school, I knew I wanted to get into museums, and I knew I wanted to be back on the East Coast because I grew up in New Hampshire originally. So the EcoTarium really appealed to me because it marries not only natural history and museums, but also we have a 45-acre campus. And the other piece, the thing that I love most about this museum is that green space, that outdoor space, which really allows the museum to connect kids with nature, which to me, it was such an important part of my life growing up. And I'm really thrilled to be able to help advance a mission for a museum like this that really marries those two passions of mine.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's really interesting. Yeah, you never really know where your education is going to take you at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like people in the museum world, it's never a straight shot. You know, you could come in from, marketing, from anthropology again, from finance. It's very strange, but always a fascinating thing to talk to somebody about.
Right. It takes a whole village, right? An interdisciplinary community to make things like this work. That's excellent.
Absolutely.
All right. So before we get into the EcoTarium specifically, why is it so important to educate people about science and nature in general?
Yeah, so I think, educating, especially about science, it really promotes critical thinking skills that are important for everyday life. It talks about how we ask questions, how we organize our life, and how we solve problems. And the EcoTarium in particular, we really focus on a younger age group, so primarily kids 12 and under. So it's when kids are still learning these organizational skills and these problem solving skills and still looking toward their parents for some of this input as well. So what we really try and do is try and spark intergenerational conversations. So our exhibits are built so parents and kids can work through things together, work through problems together and learn together, because it's really important for us. And in terms of the nature side of things, we're getting more and more built up. Worcester is a very busy city. There's not as much, actually, there's a lot of parks in Worcester, but it's difficult all over the nation right now to find big patches of green space. And so the EcoTarium, we're very lucky to have those 45 acres and almost 3 miles of walking trails. And we try and use that to our best advantage to get kids outside and really in nature. And so not just seeing nature, but actually, pulling grass and rolling in the mud and dirt and getting their hands on that kind of thing. It's something we really feel proud of. So that out of classroom time learning is really important.
Right. Okay, good. So you get a little bit of the inside interactive activities, and then they can go outside and also experience maybe what they just learned about off a video or reading something or working with their parents.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's super cool. So some people are probably asking what is an EcoTarium, right? So what's a quick way to kind of describe what the museum does without getting into too many specific activities yet? We'll get to that after.
Sure. So the EcoTarium, our tagline is that we are a museum of science and nature. Again, I already mentioned earlier, we have a 45-acre campus. But we were actually we're founded in 1825 as the Worcester Natural History Society. So we're actually almost 200 years old. We're the second oldest natural history society in the United States. And what we like to do is give kids and adults a safe place to explore, is what we like to say. Very hands-on, very high-touch learning. And again, trying to make it intergenerational so kids and their caretakers are learning together. So that's sort of us in a nutshell.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so it's important to never stop learning as an adult either, right? So I think that's something that we sort of lose touch with as we get older. You know, we learn from reading, or we, you know, watch videos, but it's different to like get your hands dirty like we used to, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, and actually hear almost every day, parents are often intimidated by science, or they'll say, you know, I don't know enough. How am I going to teach my kids when I don't really remember this from school, or I don't know this. So we try and have a really laid back atmosphere. So it's not scary anymore. You know, it's fun, and the parents are having just as much fun as the kids, you know?
Right.
So it's a really laid back introduction to some science themes, which I think the kids really love it, but the parents definitely appreciate it too.
Right. Approachability in science is kind of a big buzzword, a big thing that we're trying to work on right now. So I'm glad to hear that. So we've kind of talked about it already, but what is the main mission then of the museum? What is the like tagline thing for you guys?
Yeah. Our formal mission is to inspire a passion for science and nature.
Okay, that's beautiful. I love it. Excellent. So now we can go a little bit, you know, get our hands in the mud here a little bit more. What are some of the activities you could highlight for us at the EcoTarium on any particular day? And, you know, you said there's lots of interactive components, those kind of things. So what can people expect?
Yeah, so the main museum building is 3 levels, and it has a mix of both permanent and temporary exhibits. So we have some exhibits that will flip out, and it typically flips about 3 times a year. So one that we actually have coming up later this fall is called Tree Houses. So it will encourage kids to walk up on these platforms that are sort of shaped like tree houses and explore what other animals use trees as their own homes. So it talks about, you know, squirrels, raccoons, opossum, what else is going on there? A lot of beetles too. So kids are sort of immersed in this experience, but learning kind of, it's not really a tree house for us to play in, it's also actually home for a lot of these other animals. Oh, cool. So there's exhibits like that on all 3 floors. We also have a planetarium. So a nice big dome planetarium. We have a narrow gauge railway that's about a 12-minute ride, and it kind of goes along the outside of our campus. So people can jump on a train and go for a quick train ride as well. And we have education programs that run constantly. Some of them are reserved programs from school groups and field trips coming in, but there are also pop-up programs all over the site. So you'll see an educator just come out with a table with some hands-on high-touch experiments that they can do, and people can rush over and play and learn face-to-face with one of our educators. We also have summer camp, lots of walking trails, and our social media and Facebook. Of course, with COVID, we've been really concerned, don't want to get too many people together. So we've been doing a ton of virtual educational programs and pushing them out via social media, which has been actually really wonderful for us. We've been able to reach many more people than we have before, and we've had some rave reviews. So hope you guys everyone can check those out, because they're a blast to make, and our education team has a lot of fun with it.
Right. Awesome. A super valuable resource for the community at any time, but maybe even a little bit more so right now, like especially when you're talking about the difficulties of parents helping out their children if they're at home, and just to give a little bit of, and a refreshing resource as well, right? Because sometimes it's a lot of the same. So yes. That's excellent. That's super exciting. What is your personal favorite part of the museum? This might be a mean question, but
yeah, no, it's actually, I know exactly what it is. So we have, the museum has a lot of wildlife on site, and it's native wildlife to New England. We're a little different. We're not a zoo experience. The wildlife we have on site, 90% of it is rescue and rehab animals. So they're with us because there's nowhere else for them to go. And every animal we have really has a story, and it really makes it interesting to walk around. So I think our wildlife really appeals to me. It's probably my favorite part of the museum. For instance, we have a bald eagle. Her name is Diane, and she's with us. She came up to us from Florida with a wing injury. So she cannot fly. There's no way she could hunt or live on her own. So she was in the rehab center in Florida for a while in the hopes that she could strengthen that wing back up and be released to the wild. Unfortunately, that couldn't happen. So she's now with us. But these animals, we feel, the kids, especially the kids, they see those animals, and it's another way for them to engage and get really, really into what they're learning. So we sort of use them. Obviously, the kids aren't getting near them, no touch anything. But there's, even that visual. Then they'll go and read and learn more about bald eagles. But because they had that experience and were able to see something like that live, it sinks in a little more, and the retention rate is higher. So again, it's unfortunate that we have so many animals on site that need homes and across the globe that need help. But we think we use the animals that we have. We call them our ambassador animals, to really promote, again, a love of nature and a respect of nature. So hopefully that point gets across to all of our guests.
Right. Yeah. It's helpful to have that kind of like closer connection to nature and wildlife we don't always see. And especially with, I want to say we're getting better, but, with a lot of habitat degradation and things, like, people don't get to see that in their backyards in the same way. So just to give that sort of extra up close idea for children, especially, that's super exciting. And of course it sucks the animals can't be in nature, but at least they're getting a second life and kind of secondhand helping their species, right?
Oh yeah. And some of the stories we can tell, we have 2 mountain lions on site now. Their names are Sultan and Freya. They're a brother and sister pair. They were actually found out in California, orphaned. And what happens when cubs are orphaned, they have volunteers watch them for quite a long period of time to make sure the mom will not return before they're taken under human care. So these guys were deemed orphan, and they were in really rough shape when they were brought in. They were rehabbed at a zoo for a few months before they were sent to us. But the story that we tell with them, we have in the same area at the museum, there's a turkey vulture, and the story that we tell is really about rodenticide and the use of poisoning, and how they've actually found mountain lions now that have they eat certain animals that have eaten other animals that have been poisoned, and that this poison is actually going up the food chain, and actually impacting apex predators like mountain lions, and this is because we have them on site. Now this is a story we can tell, and about the importance of really understanding the impact of what we're doing and what that is doing to the world and the environment. So again, it's unfortunate that these cubs are taken in, but they were so young when they were abandoned, or when they were orphaned. There's no way they could survive in the wild. They have no hunting skills.
Of course.
And we're lucky to have given them a home. And they tell a good story. They allow us to tell a story that we believe is impactful and important.
Right, that's excellent. Yeah, it's definitely a whole extra medium that a lot of places don't have the opportunity to use. So
For sure.
It's like ultra 4K real animals. Excellent. That's so great. Yeah, I think that would probably be my personal favorite part too, is the live animals. It's always hard not to just love being able to see these things up close.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but just focusing in a little bit more, why is the center so important for the community in particular? Like, we've talked about it as science in general, but for Worcester and the children there.
Yeah, so we see on a typical year between 170 and 180,000 people a year.
Wow.
Many of those are from central New England, from Worcester and the surrounding towns, but we actually have people come from New York, Maine, actually all over the world, and come and visit. Wow. And we like to think of ourselves, or we want the community to use us as a resource as well for community events. And not just for formal science and nature education. So we also partner with a lot of the local colleges, a lot of the local high schools and junior high. The vocational tech, for example, sends some of their students to work with us. And then we have internships galore, a lot of volunteer opportunities as well. And as you can imagine, we have, because we have animals like the mountain lions on site, we're very close to Tufts Veterinary School. It's only about 20 minutes from us.
Oh, good.
So those students, as they are going through their program, they will sometimes have access to our programs for annual physicals and things. If our mountain lions need their physical, or our otters, our river otters, they need a physical. Those students will sometimes shadow and work with their professors with our animals. So they get this experience that they really wouldn't have an opportunity to get elsewhere.
Right.
So it's really helpful, not just for this, again, formal museum education where you, like the museum with the capital M, there's a lot of other things going on in the background too. And we're lucky to have such an amazing community that obviously with COVID too, when we went into a kind of a hibernation period in COVID, like most people did. But the community really stepped up and supported the museum like through that time. So when we were able to reopen our outdoor spaces, which we just did last week, and the indoor spaces will reopen soon. But we were just overwhelmed by the amount of support we got from the community at that time.
That's excellent. It's so important to organizations like this to have a community, and it's important to the community to have organizations like this. So you guys gotta go hand in hand helping each other out. That's excellent. So we talked a little bit about their internships, but how else can the community get involved? Like the normal community that's not studying, maybe.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of volunteer opportunities on site, and again, there's some always opportunities you wouldn't necessarily think of with museums, because we have the animals, but we also are in constant need of photographers, and even people. We have a neat project right now to kind of re-inventory and photograph our natural history collection, because there's a whole chunk of it, dating back almost 200 years, that is not digitized. And what we are trying to do is get that whole collection up online so people can search it for research purposes, but also the general public. We also are what we call a small and mighty staff. So we do not have a ton of people to go in and photograph 55,000 items, in our collection. Right. So we are using volunteers to come in, work with our exhibits and collection staff to photograph these items, and also take, some cases, they're handwritten cards about where these things are from, the provenance of all of them. And they're taking those and transcribing them, typing them up into the system, so everything is getting up online. As you can imagine, that is a very time-consuming thing.
Yes.
Staff cannot do it, so we always use volunteers for things like that. We also have volunteer opportunities for big event days. So my favorite is called Mud Day. So again, this is us trying to get kids out in nature. We have a big playground area called Nature Explore, and it's probably. It's not an acre, but it's a very large space, and there's a stream running through the middle of it. And for Mud Day, we basically hose down a giant chunk of it, so it's just really muddy and gross. And all of these kids come in, and everyone who comes knows to bring extra clothes for their kids. But they basically go and they make mud sculptures, and they paint on canvas with mud. And anything you can possibly do with mud. They'll dam up the stream, using mud and rocks and stuff. And they just get disgustingly dirty, and it's great and wonderful. And we always need volunteers for events like that, because it brings in big crowds of people. And even if it's something as simple as like having a hose, so if a kid needs to be hosed off before they get in the car, we can help with that. Or just directing people when they want to know where our fox is, or how do we get to go see the mountain lions or the owls. The volunteer can help get people where they need to go.
Right.
So something like that is always helpful. Another thing people can do is become a member of the museum, or any museum in your local community, honestly. Just supporting nonprofits through a membership on top of visitation is hugely helpful. And always appreciated. And I think the last thing I would mention is advocating for museums and nonprofits, because there's always more that we can do on the state and federal level to support these museums and nonprofits. So many, again, especially with COVID, so many nonprofits are not going to survive through this last year. Yeah. So I think now is more important than ever to really speak up about those things in your community that are important to you. And hopefully a museum is one of them.
Right. Excellent. Lots of opportunities, lots of things to do. Definitely keep an eye out for Mud Day because that seems unreal.
Yep, I will be there for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. That sounds fantastic. Something
It's
that
a
we
fun
don't
day.
do enough these days, I think, is just
Yeah.
get real dirty.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. That is great. Well, I think those are the majority of my questions. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we hop off here?
No, not really. I really appreciate this opportunity, and thanks for reaching out to us. And hopefully, we'll see a bunch of people at the museum soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Yeah, we'll put down in the description a link to the museum, to the webpage, and to maybe Facebook and Instagram so people can follow along. Can go physically to the museum, to outdoors, indoors when it opens, and check out some of the virtual events, right? Which are
Perfect.
Are you guys planning on running those still a little bit after things normalize?
Yeah, probably after. We've been looking at, we have programs called EcoTarium 21, and it's adult night programs at the museum. So people can really act like kids, again, without kids around. And it's really fun, but we're hopefully that will start up again in the fall. We hope to have 2 or 3 this year, but it's just not safe to do so yet.
Of course.
But keep an eye out for the fall. Hopefully that will be our first one this year.
All right, that's excellent. If anybody's in the area, thinking about moving to the area, definitely just keep an eye on social media, the website, and see for those things. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kerry, for all that awesome information and for joining me today. We learned a ton about the EcoTarium, all the exciting activities and programs it offers. And I'm sure anybody who hasn't been there is looking forward to their first visit, and those that have been are looking forward to what you guys have in the future.
Great.
For anybody else watching, I hope you enjoyed this interview today. And if you want to do an interview with us talking about your museum, your park, organization, any other establishment that you think is interesting and important to the community, get in touch with us through our website or our social media. Until next time.